person that sent me this story called it my spooky New Hampshire story. We have another New Hampshire story. Who knew there were so many spooky things happening in New Hampshire? By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi. I saw your video on TikTok on Thornton, New Hampshire, and it made me want to share my own story about Northern New Hampshire. I can assure the person who sent you that story is certainly not alone in their strange experience. My boyfriend and I are very outdoorsy. We love to hike and fish for native trout in the northern half of the state. We always tried to venture to Pittsburgh, New Hampshire at least twice a year. With all the time we've spent in the woods in that town, we've had a fair share of weird and sometimes endearing experiences. Nothing like our last experience, though. We have not returned since. Oh my God. If they were going twice a year and then they stopped going, something fucking bad must have happened. We always stayed at the same Airbnb to a point where the hosts were familiar with us. It was quiet, clean, and we always felt safe there. Our last trip was a literal wash. Most of the week it was raining heavily to the point most of Pittsburgh was flooded. The final full day we had, the sun came out and we were able to spend a whole day hiking and fishing like we'd planned to do the whole week. My boyfriend found a spot far outside of the main part of town close to the Canadian border that he thought would be perfect for native trout fishing. So we packed his truck and we headed there. The spot that he'd found was a little pull off where we had cut through a field to get to the wooded area with the stream. It wasn't a marked off trail or anything like that. Due to the flooding, the mud went up to our knees, so it wasn't suitable to hike unless you were wearing waders like us. We were entirely alone, which typically I liked, but something about this spot felt off. I felt immediately uneasy and my brain felt foggy and the woods were dead quiet. That's bad. When it's dead quiet, that is never good. To me, it genuinely felt so ominous, even though it was a pretty spot. My boyfriend went around a bend into a stream to fish, and I sat at the edge of the water trying to pull myself together. Again, I'm no stranger to the woods. I've heard possibly every strange sound that an animal can make, but out of nowhere, I heard, as clear as day, a deep, evil human laugh like it was right next to me. I immediately ran upstream and told my boyfriend we had to leave, so we did. We spent the remainder of the early evening fishing in the main part of town on a different river. We packed up pretty early since we had to go home the next day and headed back to our Airbnb. My boyfriend made dinner once we got back. I wanted to read while he cooked. I asked him for his truck keys since I'd left my book in there. He told me that the truck was unlocked and he didn't know where his keys were. We looked all through the house and started panicking a bit when we couldn't find them. It wasn't like him to lose something, ever. Especially something as important as keys. We started looking outside. We checked on the porch, which was connected to the house by a glass slider. We checked the porch steps that led to the driveway and even in the lawn. We'd looked everywhere for hours. Since my boyfriend's truck is the type where the key doesn't actually go in the ignition to start, we double-checked if, one, we could start the truck with the keys close by, which we could, and two, if we could drive off without said keys, which it seemed like an alarm would go off in the truck if we did. We tried starting it, and it didn't. It told us that the keys were out of range. At that point, it was late and dark and raining again, and we had no way to get home the next morning. We started walking back to the river on the off chance that we dropped them there and didn't hear the truck warning that we were leaving the keys. As we were walking, I had the same ominous feeling I did in the woods earlier, only now it was dark and raining. I was able to convince my boyfriend to go back to the Airbnb and told him that we'd wake up early to find his keys then. When we got back, it was about 2 a.m. and we just went to bed. The next morning, we woke up and headed to the slider to start looking in the front yard for the keys again. To our surprise, the keys were in front of the slider. They were completely visible from inside the house and incredibly hard to miss going in and out of the house as we had done a dozen times the night before. I can say with absolute certainty that the keys were not there the night before, and with their proximity to the truck, it should have started when we tried that. I still have no idea what happened that whole last day. I'm not usually a timid person, but something about it just felt very off, and it still freaks me out now. The end! Okay, I think that the keys were obviously taken for a reason so that they would have to stay and they would go look for them and go back to the spot to look for them. Thank God the person that wrote the story had a bad feeling and was able to convince her boyfriend, no, we need to turn around. Like, I am not comfortable doing this, because I wonder what would have happened if it was fucking 1, 2 in the morning and they're venturing back to the spot where there was a fucking evil ass human laugh and no other sounds. Like, that's not good. Good on you for listening to your intuition, boo. And so glad that your boyfriend listened to you. I'm glad that you guys are okay, but how scary. Thank you so much for sharing.